the thing I want everyone, just given the theme of the show, to understand is there is a place for everyone in AI. We need people to sell the AI. We need people to learn how to use the AI tools. We need people who want to create the AI. You don't have to write code. I haven't written code in a very long time. You need people who understand the architecture of it, the ethics of it. So there's a lot of space for women in artificial intelligence.
Going toward the unknown. When you're riding the big wheel, you're not alone.
Hey, it's Michelle, and today I am so excited about our conversation with a trailblazer in AI and powerhouse CEO. Susan Sly is an accomplished entrepreneur and CEO, AI strategist, health advocate, best-selling author, and a fierce champion for women in technology. Today, we're going to delve into her incredible personal and professional story, from overcoming personal health challenges, self-learning AI, founding groundbreaking companies, and how she globetrots and brings her message across the world to educate and inspire us all to be our best selves and learn how we can really have it all. Susan, I am extremely excited, and I have really been anticipating you being on my podcast. So thank you so much for making the time today. We are going to have like a really good conversation. And as I had told you, my challenge is going to be getting everything that I want out of this podcast in the time that we have, because there's so many things I want to ask you about.
Well, Michelle, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And for everyone listening, I know that Michelle and I, we're going to have kind of a girlfriend chat. So
Yep.
we're going to go in all sorts of directions. It's going to be a great show.
It's going to be a great show. So I thought we could first just ground people a bit in you. You've got an amazing personal and professional story, and just tell them a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I think, like many of the listeners, we all go through seasons of our lives, and we can look at those seasons as finite, or we can look at them as an opportunity to start a new chapter. And in my journey in entrepreneurship started when I was quite young. And many entrepreneurs decide to start a business because they have a problem they want to solve. So for me, I was 11 years old. I wanted to buy Christmas gifts. And I said to my dad, "Can I have some money?" And he said, "No, but you can start a business." And I was raised by a phenomenal single father back in the day where men just weren't single fathers. And so I said, "Well, what business should I start?" And he said, "Well, what do you like to do?" And I love to do crafts. And so I started a crafting business making Christmas ornaments. And I, go up to people and say, "Hey, do you want to buy one?" And I got all of the objections. "They're too expensive. No, I don't need them." And what a great life lesson. So I took his investment in my business. It was $40, turned it into 80, paid him back, reinvested, and I started. And that's where I got hooked, Michelle, on this concept of betting on myself. And so I've had many different businesses. Currently, I am the founder and CEO of a company called ThePause. We are focused on using AI to help women receive precision recommendations to help them navigate menopause. And prior to that, I had co-founded another AI company in the computer vision space. Under my tenure, we did the largest deployment of AI in retail in the United States. I'm the only woman to ever deploy AI at scale. And so it's been a great journey. And I feel like in my 50s, every day I'm just getting started.
I feel the same way. So we are close to the same age. Let's talk about your journey and how you got into AI, because I think that's fascinating. I know you've got a technical background, but not necessarily in AI. And I find that super inspiring as people think about, oh my God, can I really pivot and shift at this point in my life? And your answer is you can. So I'd love for you to talk about what is it that made you want to go into AI? And, your company that you co-founded, I think is very interesting when you think about the mission of that company. So I'd like to get a little bit deeper into that if we can.
Sure. So when I left home when I was 15 and I skipped 2 grades in high school, and I was always a person who I would say didn't embrace the nerdy side of my personality. I looked at what I see now as a strength, Michelle, I saw as a weakness then. So I was the kid in the chess club, I was the kid in band, I was the fat kid that got bullied and physically beaten at school. And I was also really smart. And I think for me, that one of the pieces was embracing my who I am as a person. And I need everyone out there to hear that. Some of you are living lives that are so damn inauthentic because you're resisting your true nature and those things that really fill your well and fuel you. And so what happened for me is I started university at 16 and I needed a job. And there was a job posting for a research assistant in the criminology department. And so I got the job, and I had been writing code in in the 80s, coding my own video games and so forth. And so I start working for this professor, and what we're researching actually is serial killers. I know this sounds crazy. This is not a true crime podcast, but I will tell you. So back in those days, there's no internet, right? This is the eve before 95 when the internet really grabs hold. And so think about researching with microfiche, going to the library, reading all these books. And so that's what I did. And so we were taking these traits of serial killers and we were building early algorithms. And then what we were doing is we were working with law enforcement and other universities, including Oxford University, and we were quantifying crime scenes and making essentially taking what is happening in a scene and turning it into a number. And I'm going to make this relevant to the AI we know today in a minute. So for imagine, and this is gory, so if you have kids, and cover their ears. So if you look at a crime scene, how much blood is there? It's coated with blood. That would be a 10. There's no blood. Let's call it a 0. So what we were able to accomplish, Michelle, in creating these early algorithms was helping law enforcement take a potential group of perpetrators and go from very broad to narrow. So 1,000 potential candidates who had committed a crime down to 100, make it very usable and scalable.
Wow.
So from there, I went into federal law enforcement in Canada because I was so passionate about this. I wanted to be Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs. Like, that's what I want to do. And I very quickly realized that that wasn't what I wanted to do, which thank goodness I did at an early age. And then I went into health and wellness for decades, became a holistic nutritionist. I wanted to solve some of my own health challenges. And then in 2016, I've been to 36 countries. I've done all sorts of crazy things like doing recon in brothels in Cambodia so that IJM could come in and rescue kids. And anyway, I'd been in
Wow.
Africa and I came back and I was really, really sick. And the I found out that I had an amoeba and it was shutting down my organs and I was dying. And as I'm laying
Oh
there
my
and I'm
God.
literally praying to God, I had this small voice that kept saying, in order to live, you're going to have to die. Like, what is it that I haven't done? This is 2016. So I'm 46 years old at the time. And I kept thinking, what if I die right now, what is it that I haven't done in my career? I'm a mom, wife, all these things, but what is it? And I kept thinking, I want to go back into technology. So I
Mm.
started in digital marketing, opened a digital marketing agency, grew that very quickly. And then in 2018, I ran a 1-day sales seminar, and this guy comes and he's building an AI company. And so he shares with me his pitch deck. And I'm like, could I give you some advice on this deck? Because, it needs some work. And then he said, would you help us raise money? And that's how I ended up going into AI, first helping that company to raise money, bring in customers. And then I went back to school on the eve of the pandemic, went to MIT Sloan, so the business side. Then I went back again and I went to executive education on the engineering side. I graduated. So that's how I ended up in artificial intelligence. So it was like this calling for me of who I am as a woman today. But AI is not that complicated if you understand how to create the basics of it. And that's why I shared it's taking a scene, making it into numbers. All AI
Yeah.
is taking numbers and building algorithms. That's it.
So I think the journey is pretty amazing. And what I, found really inspiring about it is you did that 8 years ago and you've completely rebranded who you are and what you're doing. I mean, one can argue you've built on it over, decades as I look at things you've done a long time ago into the present day. But I find it really just incredible story. So you just made a comment about all AI is, right? Computer technology, and yet people are very afraid of it. I did have a question I wanted to ask you about AI. So, how you define it. And I had a really a funny question I wanted to ask you, which is, do you think the future of AI really is, will we continue to have loaders? Do they become obsolete? Will the technology begin to just teach itself and become independent of us? Like, what let's talk about some of the perceptions that are out there, real or maybe not from your perspective, and what you think is, ahead. So, what is it today? How's it evolving? What do you think the outcome is really going to be?
That is a great question, right? And that's what everyone wants to know.
Yeah.
If it's okay with you, I'd like to go back in time a little bit, not in my timeline, but the AI timeline, so that people understand. Yeah, I did a talk recently. It's like, how did we get here, right? Suddenly,
Yeah. How did we get
it's like
here?
there's ChatGPT. So the
Yep.
AI in its basic form, machine learning, has been around for decades. In fact, in healthcare, early AI machine learning models came out of Stanford back in the 60s. I mean, this is a long time. And certain sectors, it was first used to be able to say, okay, we're going to be able to create these software programs essentially that can read documents or read patient files. And from there, what the machine learning was doing essentially would be initially identifying keywords, right? Like tumor, mast, squamous cells, whatever those keywords were, and then looking for trends. So some of the industries that were early adopters of machine learning, definitely the insurance industry, actuaries looking at, what are these trends? How do we create predictive models to be able to say, what is Michelle going to pay for healthcare versus what Susan's going to pay for healthcare? Because they were very money motivated for the margins, right? So then we saw back, I would say, oh gosh, a few years ago, it's this concept of generative AI. So if a human puts in some kind of data, mostly words at this point, what is the AI going to generate? And so we had early versions of this, like Google search and even with Facebook search and so on, that the human says, oh, okay, I'm looking for a restoration hardware table on Facebook Marketplace, and it's scouring vast amounts of data to be able to find a restoration hardware table Facebook Marketplace within a 20-mile radius, that kind of
Mm.
thing.
Yep.
The other thing, how we got here, I want us to go back in time to Facebook, Michelle, in 2008. So I remember Chris Shipley. Chris Shipley was my grade 8 prom date. And Chris Shipley reached out to me, said, Susan, he sent me an email, you need to be on Facebook. And I'm like, why do I need to be on Facebook? And
Oh,
then
interesting.
I
Mm.
go on Facebook and there's, Chris and some of our other school friends. And I'm like, this is really cool. So do you remember, Michelle, when it used to pop up? It'd be like, is this Susan in the photo with you? You go, yeah.
Yes. Yes. Hmm.
And then I have a hat on. You have a hat on. We're at a baseball game. Is that Susan in the photo with you? Yes. So, what we did for Facebook, you're welcome, Mark Zuckerberg. What we did for Facebook is we annotated all of their facial recognition database. So,
Oh,
Facebook has
wow. Hmm.
the biggest, I don't know if it's the biggest, but I'm gonna speculate. There's the biggest facial recognition database in the world, and we annotated all of that. And data annotation essentially says verifying that
Mm.
data. So then with social media, they started with the facial recognition, and then they were able to create even more models to recognize different types of dogs because we did all that for them. And so we thought we were getting this platform for free, but hopefully you own Meta shares because we built that company, right? We should all be entitled to the abundance
Yeah.
they've
Huh.
had. So when we look at the timeline, what we began to see was there were these big databases, there were all of these use cases happening. And then a few years ago at OpenAI, when Sam Altman, Elon Musk, and they were like, well, we're going to democratize this because prior to this, AI models were only for large enterprises. So what we were building at my previous company was enterprise level AI for multi-billion dollar companies. So what Sam Altman, Elon, they're having an argument right now, but what they said is, what if we could give AI to the people?
Mhm.
That was how they began to think about it, and that's when a couple of years ago we all got access to the first version of ChatGPT, and in 2 years generative AI has gone from mostly text-based to now if you use Sora, the model where you get
Yeah.
text to video,
Yep.
now we have voice. So you mentioned this inflection point where AI begins to exceed human capabilities. That is
Hmm.
called the singularity. That is coming. Some people expect that could happen as early as the next 18 months from now.
Mm.
When that happens, there's a lot of different things that can happen from the human form, but I want everyone to understand it is inevitable that it is going to happen, and some of the AI models currently are outperforming the biggest human capability. When we go beyond the singularity, the
Mm.
concern is we go from artificial intelligence to artificial general intelligence. So if we think of the Avengers movies and we think of Iron Man, Jarvis was an artificial general intelligence, but when it evolves and AI can create its own AI, that is artificial super intelligence. And who knows how far that is away. It could be a few years, it could be 10 years.
Wow. So you do believe that that is where we're headed? The singularity within the next, what, decade?
Oh, faster.
Sooner. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Elon Musk is saying the singularity within the next, you know, 18 months.
Yep.
Sam Altman is saying the singularity within possibly the next 32 months. And
Yep.
so I followed very closely the 12 days of OpenAI that they had in December and look at those announcements. And so it is inevitable, but the limitation is the compute power and also the energy, Michelle, that goes into um, those data centers and to process the AI. It's very expensive. That's why we see companies like Microsoft buying nuclear reactors. That's
Yeah.
why
I was, yep.
China, their AI development is further ahead than ours is, and they have built dozens of nuclear reactors just for AI. It doesn't give any power to the people. It's all for AI development. And so that the once we really master quantum computing, that is what is required for that massive AI advancement. And so you look at Elon Musk in his data center in Memphis, he bought 100,000 H100s. These are the very high processing GPUs from NVIDIA
Yeah.
that put in an order for another 100,000 more. The city of Memphis is not happy with him because his data center requires cooling, and it's liquid cooling that is required. So there are all these factors that go into it, but I do know then in the United States, the race is on to create these data centers and the quantum computing that are going to facilitate the AI advancement. So it's not an if, it's when. And to be very candid, if you look at the evolution of what Chat GPT did in the last 2 years, and now you can have AI agents that talk to each other and reason with each
Mhm.
other and problem solve. China was already doing that 2 years ago. So it's inevitable, and it
Wow.
could be it could be faster.
All right, that's very interesting about the singularity of AI. I hadn't heard it expressed like that before. I am extremely interested in your perspective because I know when you were co-CEO of Radius AI, one of the purpose and mission of that company was what you call human-centric AI solutions, and I believe that you are still true to that through what you're doing today. So I want to hear from your perspective, how this will impact the human condition. There are good things and not so good things. And what is it that you want people to know about it?
Sure. Love that question. And I would say most people, I can't speak globally, but most people domestically who are working in AI, we're all doing it for the betterment of humanity. And that's the thing to understand. I know, so many people that work at, the big companies, small companies, and we're all looking at AI to say, hey, how do we help humans? And so the big thing is good people will always create good technology, bad people create bad technology, but good technology in the hands of bad people, it's going to do bad things, right?
Mm.
So thinking about this, when we look at what are the implications for humanity and what does human-centric AI really mean? So human-centric AI says, how do we take AI and benefit a human in one of numerous ways? So I'm going to give one example that I'm very passionate about because it's a real example, and you and I spoke about this a while ago. So on July 10th of 2024, it was a Wednesday morning, and I got up and I prayed and I meditated, and then I turned on my phone. When I don't turn on my phone until I do those things. And the first call I got right away, I got a text, Susan, urgent, call me. And it was my dad's senior concierge, and Sherry, and she said, your father's died overnight. And I had just been speaking to him and I started crying. And the way he died, he got up, he was diabetic, he was in an assisted living, but he got up and he fell and they found him in the morning. So let me give an example. So human-centric AI with, say, computer vision is to be able to say, Susan, your dad might not have had to die. And my grandma died in the same way. And my father-in-law died in the same way. They got up, they fell, and it was hours and hours before someone found them. So when I take an AI model and I'm able to use a standard security camera and it's interpreting what's happening. So a human is on the ground. Okay, I can send a real-time alert with an AI agent to a nurse, come right now to check on that person. Okay. That is human-centric AI. We're using different forms of AI to say, this is going to save lives. This is for the betterment of humans. And we have a lot of different use cases for it, Michelle.
Yeah.
So non-human centric AI is something like the following real use case. So in China, they had two AI drones and they hit a key in a park. And this was back in the fall of 2023-ish. They hide the key in the park, massive park, and the only thing they tell the drones is this: find the key. Sorry, there's three drones. So all the drones go up in the air, 15 seconds, they get organized. And think of how they're processing. Okay, you go search this area, you go search this area, you go search this area. It'd be like humans. Okay, let's make a plan. Whoever finds it, send this signal. 90 seconds in a 50, I believe it was 50 acre. And they found it, the key.
Wow.
No other instructions.
Wow.
Is that human centric AI? That's a
Mm.
philosophy question, right? It's not a technology question. So the human centric AI is always going to benefit humans. Even OpenAI, that was their intention, democratization of AI, human centric AI, but not all AI being created is to benefit humans, or it is to benefit a few humans, but to the detriment of a large number of humans.
Right. Hmm.
Mhm.
That's very well put. Thank you for that. Um, as people, as leaders think about bringing AI into the workplace,
Mhm.
be it for operational efficiencies, whatever it is that they might be thinking. I know that there's all the chatter is how many jobs are going to be displaced because of AI. I argue that it will actually help to level the playing field between high and low performers, actually, that people are not going to be able to. You can argue maybe they can fake it out a little bit longer, but I'm going to argue that poor performers will be exposed. What is it that you think, as a leader in a large corporation, let's say, or even a small business, needs to be thinking about as they consider AI in their workplace? And what is it they need to be thinking about in particular with how it serves or the impact it may have on their people as well as their customers? I mean, I would think the AI solutions are mostly within the business environment. A lot of them are customer centric. The reason is for some type of customer experience. But what do they need to be thinking about around the impact on their people?
Mm. There's so much to unpack there. I love it.
I know. I always ask these big questions because there's so many things I want to ask you about, so we can break it down and just simplify it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, let's start top down because I have experience working with large multi-billion dollar
Yeah.
corporations who are incorporating AI. So the first thing is step number one is look at your board
Mm.
and who on your board has AI experience. If the answer is zero, you're not ready to implement AI because you will be faced with ethical questions, your own guardrails. How do you vet ISVs, so independent software vendors, in terms of these AI solutions? If no one has experience with AI on your board, you need to change your board up. That's number one. There's no question. Number two is it's really critical to, before you implement AI solutions, even if you think they're minor ones, to have an internal team that is made up of different stakeholders. So, for example, with computer vision, if you're going to use the security cameras to interpret human behavior, you should have someone from your head of security, you should have someone from your IT department and sales and HR and legal. And people say, well, those people, it's too many people at the table. And I'm like, well, you need a variety of voices so you can make a decision that when your customers or if there's a lawsuit and it comes back to you, you can say, yes, we had a variety of voices. So that's the second thing. Then that steering committee needs to say, okay, this is what our AI policy is, because you
Mm.
need an individual AI policy for your company. These are the standards that we are going to adhere to. And this is why we want to use AI. And so being very, very clear, because there are different kinds of artificial intelligence. It's not just one. And to be able to say, okay, we want to use AI for a better customer experience. So we want to have an AI agent that is engaging with customers 24/7 because those agents don't get tired. It's a better customer experience, but that AI agent knows when to hand off to an actual human who's very highly trained. Now that human only deals with the use cases where they can really add value to the customer, not the simple things like what is your zip code, right? Like those types of things.
Yeah.
So we have to be very clear and deliberate. And you said something earlier about job displacement, and I want to reiterate that displacement of jobs. The same thing we're going through with the AI evolution is what happened with watching movies from home.
Mhm.
Everyone said all the movie theaters are going to close. No one's going to want to go to the theater. That is not true,
Mhm.
especially for the big movies that people still go to the theater, right? Then the internet earlier, everyone's like, oh, the internet is going to, it's going to take over all the jobs. Well, actually, it created new jobs. And we've seen that with every major technological advancement, even the cell phone, right? So humans are, that we do evolve. My big concern is that people do not allow themselves to be flexible, to be able to see themselves in this new world, because some jobs are not going to exist anymore. Just like some jobs now that existed in the past do not exist anymore. And there are new jobs that have been created. The same thing. Some jobs just won't exist.
Yeah, I hear you on being flexible and adaptable. Um, it seems it's very interesting, the debate and the question, because I happen to be in your camp on that. I think that it's going to make better consultants for our team. And I tell them, look, we're going to take some of the administrative burden away from you, the research capabilities, the data analysis. Like, if we can automate some of these things, how great for me that you get to spend more time in front of clients solving their problems, right? Really coming up with the best solutions for them. So I would agree with you on that. Um, I want to ask you about women in technology, because you are a woman in technology. And there's, the people listening here, a lot of them, my guests and listeners, are both women in leadership, but clearly
Mhm.
we have men on this podcast as well. So we represent all. That
Yeah.
said, for leaders, what do they need to be thinking about? Because what we know, you know a lot more about this than I do, but boy, we had a very interesting conversation about how many women in technology leave mid career. I want to
Mhm.
talk about why and what we need to be doing collectively to keep them in their jobs, right? Like, why are they leaving? And second part of that question, why is it that it's so important for us to have representation across all genders?
That's a great question. The statistic for women in general leaving mid-career. So McKinsey came out with a study and said that 41% of women who are in senior leadership positions, so we think director and above, want
Okay.
to leave their jobs, and their number one reason was due to lack of support during menopause.
Mm,
So we don't know in the granularity of the study on women leaving technology, it wasn't really explored if part of it is like lack of support, right? But
yep.
is that lack of support also due to menopause? And so, which is what at the pause we're seeking to solve, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
when we look at technology as a whole, so for AI, less than 22% of AI workers are women. And more often than not, and I know, Michelle, you've had this experience yourself, I have been for years, up until recently, the only woman in the room.
Yep.
And I have been talked over. I have been ostracized. Will you get the coffee, Susan? You're not very technological. It it's just so incredible to me.
Yep.
I have been, even as a CEO of a company, if I bring one of my male team members, it has been that team member gets invited to the next tech meeting, and I don't get invited to the next tech meeting.
Mm,
And I've seen it in rooms where it's like they'll ask the guy the question, not the women. Now, that is bad behavior. And it's sometimes it's subconscious behavior. It's just that women in technology, we haven't stood up for our voices, and we have been and remain a strong minority. And then of the women in technology, many of the women in technology are immigrants. We've done a really horrible job for STEM in I'm originally from Canada, but we've done a horrible job for girls in STEM in Canada and the US. So as a result, we have a generation of women now just coming up who it was, yes, study math, yes, study engineering, yes, study computer science. Let's do all of those things. But that Gen Z generation is just the first one. And so
mhm.
leaving mid-career, there's a variety of factors, but I would say the thing I want everyone, just given the theme of the show, to understand is there is a place for everyone in AI. We need people to sell the AI. We need people to learn how to use the AI tools. We need people who want to create the AI. You don't have to write code. I haven't written code in a very long time. You need people who understand the architecture of it, the ethics of it. So there's a lot of space for women in artificial intelligence. And a lot of the talks I do, Michelle, when I'm keynote speaking, women come up to me after and say, wow, I could see myself shifting and pivoting my career. So I would say yes, women are leaving, but I don't think it's just women in technology. I think it's a universal problem.
Mm. And that gets to it's a good time to talk about the pause.
Mhm.
And you mentioned the problem that you're solving for. I think it's really fascinating. And again, that's why I had mentioned that it aligns with your mission. You're true to who you are, But you said we're going to do human centric AI solutions. You know, if I'm going to put my money behind it and myself, here's where we're going to be. So, talk a little bit more about the pause. I think it's really interesting. I have it on my phone. And, you know, we won't talk a lot about menopause, but I think that people need to understand, right? It's it's three stages and how long we're in it. Like I never even thought about that until that we're, you know, into this huge amount of time in our life that we're in some degree of menopause. So I'd love for you to talk to our listener about that.
Sure, absolutely. So it menopause is the only universal health condition every woman will face. Not every woman will have a baby. Not every woman will menstruate.
Mhm.
So by the year 2030, Michelle, 1.1 billion women in the world will be in menopause. And menopause lasts 40% of our lifetimes. And there is no data. I was at CES, I was speaking at CES, and there was a guy on stage who's like, all the data has already been created and validated. And I laughed out loud. It was like you could hear a pin drop. And my friend was moderating the panel. She's like, Susan, I heard you laughing. And I'm like, I wanted to say something to that guy. Um, and because there is actually no research. So there are different kinds of menopause. There's surgical. So I had a woman that I met at an executive dinner, and she went into menopause at 27. She had a full hysterectomy, and poof, she's 27 in menopause. Then there's chemopause. You could be a 35-year-old woman, you could get breast cancer, and you could go into chemopause. Then there's natural menopause. There are 10 different distinct phases within the types. So one of the things we did at the pause was we created a proprietary gauge your stage model. So women answer some questions and then they find out what stage of menopause, perimenopause they're in. But the reason we created, I want to step back, is I'll tell you a story. So I had been invited to go speak at this Women in AI event. It was hosted by HP and NVIDIA on Fifth Avenue in New York. And it's like, come speak, and then we'll go to a fashion show. And I'm like, yes, we've got AI.
Oh, I'm in.
Yeah, count me in. And it's a very intimate event, and it's all, SVPs and C levels of these big companies. So I go speak at the event, and a bunch of the girls were on this. They hire this like luxury bus, and we're drinking Moe. And the we're talking. The girls are like, "How much sleep did you get last night?" And one girl's like 3 hours, and I'm like, "And why?" And she goes, "The night sweats." And then we're all talking brain fog, all this stuff
Wow.
because we're all in our late 40s, early 50s. And one of the girls takes a drink of champagne. She's like, Susan, could you just solve this with AI? And it was funny, Michelle, because I had been thinking about it because I went into perimenopause at age 38 after I had my last child. And there were many meetings I'd be in, and I'd be sweating through my clothes or a whole host of other things that were happening to my body. And it was really tough. It was tough for me to try and explain what I was going through to my male co-founders. I was really challenged. At one point, I had a surgery, and and it was a female surgery, and only one of my two of my co-founders got it. The other ones kind of were like, when are you going to be back on the road traveling again? Like it was really hard, and I was struggling. So I said, I'm going to start this company, and we're going to build a platform that is fun, engaging. Women get instant wins. I just had a woman text me a video, and she's losing weight. She is given up drinking. We do a dry 21 recurring challenge. So 21 days a month, you don't drink. And our AI agent, Harmony, is creating recipe plans for her, like meal plans. She's like, I need a recipe for a quinoa salad. Harmony does it. And
Wow.
and she looks like a different woman. It's unbelievable. And so that's what we set out to do. We
Mhm.
have bigger plans and aspirations, a huge roadmap, but we're starting with the commercial app right now. It is available in the App Store, and we have women coming on the app. They're giving us early feedback. We're listening, and then we're building the features. Talk about human centric AI. These
I
women
know.
give us
Yeah. Hmm.
$3.99 a month, give us the feedback. We're improving their user experience, and then we're clear where we're going. But that's what we set out to do.
I think that's really incredible. And, you know, Well done.
Thank
I think it's highly inspirational and helpful. One of the things that you had talked about was how few health providers are out there that actually specialize in menopause. There really is a gap out in the marketplace. And I'm with you because, I was doing all kinds of research and because I like holistic solutions, right? And depending on who you talk to, you can go to doctors and they're immediately jumping to surgical solutions or I don't know, something called this Mona Lisa once that I heard about. And I'm like, I'm not doing any of this. But I had to do a lot of my own research, take it into my own hands. And most things didn't even work, Susan. But I just, fortunately, it didn't last that long. It wasn't that bad. But I think it's just because of my lifestyle in general, honestly. But it can be very, very difficult for so many women.
Yeah, and let's jump in right there. So
Yeah.
it's there are only it's one certified provider in the United States for 30,000 women. And when women say
Unbelievable.
I'm through menopause, I try not to laugh because you're actually
Mm.
not.
Mhm.
The things you don't attribute to menopause are actually mostly due to menopause.
Mm.
So I'll give you an example. There are 32 plus symptoms of perimenopause. I didn't know this. Itchy skin, frozen shoulder, like who knew, right? And so people think menopause, all it is hot flashes. No, it
Mm.
isn't. It is brain fog. It is loose skin. It is muscle weakness. It is frozen shoulder. It is the lack of strength and stamina. And women go, there's no dry vagina,
Wow.
low libido, like the list goes on and on. And women go, well, I'm through menopause. And I'm like, well, how's your sex life? I'm through menopause. How's your weight? I'm through menopause. How's your brain clarity? No, you're not through menopause. That menopause is just, I didn't have a period for a year, but guess what? The rest of my life, I'm symptomatic. You don't have to be. You
Mm.
don't have to be. Women, Michelle, are suffering in silence because they think I'm through menopause. No, you're not, sister. You're not. You're just actually beginning. And what's going to happen over the course of time is we lose a quarter pound to a half a pound of muscle every single year after the age of 25. Our brain begins to deteriorate cognitively after the age of 30. So less than 5% of women in the United States are on HRT. And prior to the women's health study that happened in '02 that essentially said women shouldn't be on hormones, 22% of women were on hormones. And up to 90,000 women every year in the United States after that study came out have died needlessly because heart disease kills more women than the top five cancers combined. And one of the things that protects women is estrogen. And they took us off all our hormones. We suffered, women died. And if you look at it, probably over 2 million women died needlessly after that. This is not coming from me. This is all evidence-based research.
Right.
So no, no one listening is actually through menopause. You might be 70, you're not through menopause, sister. You're still suffering. And I'm not saying the only answer is HRT. A lot of it is lifestyle intervention, to your point. Did you know 31% of women in menopause in the United States, Michelle, are on antidepressants? 31%.
No.
One out of three.
Oh.
So that's why when we create our AI agent, she acts like a best friend. She acts like a counselor. I have women messaging me. I talk to her about anxiety. Do you know anxiety surges are another symptom of menopause? So I'm like, I don't have my period
Mm.
through menopause. I don't have hot flashes anymore. I'm through menopause. No, you're not. No, you're not. Look.
That's actually very good advice because I actually said to you, it wasn't so difficult for me. And what I'm referring to your point, was like the hot flashes and being up at night and being hot. Like I felt fortunate about that. However, that said, you're absolutely right. I have had symptoms and do. And it's very interesting because I had talked to my GP who knows that I'm like you. I like a lot of holistic solutions. And boy, he was not my gynecologist. And I've been seeing him since I was in my 20s. And he's like, okay, it's time to debunk this whole HRT is bad for women nonsense. He said, it's just not so.
No.
And he said, I'm not appreciated for saying this, but, and so we worked on, for me, getting a different health provider, female provider. But that's the thing, like, there's so much misinformation out there too, Susan. And I see people that are suffering and that are afraid to try certain things when they can change your life for the better. So I appreciate you saying that. How do people I mean, this is a totally different topic, but how do they go about finding good advice? Start with the pause. I mean, I'm not trying to plug that, by the way. I just know that it's the people behind the technology are accessible, and that's one of the things that's very appreciated. But beyond that, like, how do they find a local provider?
Yeah, and that is something we are seeking to solve, right? The cool thing that gets me up in the morning about technology, Michelle, that puts a smile on my face, is that I think of all the problems we can solve. So one of the things I'm thinking about right now is, and we're building, is how do we connect women with certified providers? But let's say you want a certified provider, not just someone who is a physician. Maybe you want someone
Right.
who's, after my surgery, I found the greatest lymphatic drainage clinic, and these women just care and they're certified and they're nurturing. So what if that's what you need, right? So one of the things we're seeking to work with is using the AI. Once you're engaging with the AI agent and she knows, like, okay, you want a holistic, we'd like to recommend. So that's what we're seeking to build.
Oh,
That being said,
interesting. Hmm.
the average woman sees 4 to 5 providers during perimenopause and menopause, 4 to 5. And so the best resource is to go on the Menopause Society website. Every practitioner who is certified, including our friend Dr. Mia Chorney, is on that website in your state. And they have Canada and the US. That is what I would recommend. Not every
Great.
I'm going to share a quick story because, and as a podcast host, right? Like, we people don't remember any of the stats, but they remember stories. So I'm going to share a
They
story
do.
with a woman who's a good friend of mine who's 73. So she went through menopause in her 50s, and we have been friends for over 20 years. And I watched her go through it. And, like you, she had a short period of time. It was like some hot flashes and things, and then it goes away. What she didn't attribute to menopause, in her 70s, intercourse became painful.
Hmm.
And then she went to a certified provider who opened her eyes and said, this is actually due to menopause. Like, this is, menopause is not a destination, it's a start of the next 40% of our lives, right?
Wow.
So then she went on hormones, and she's totally fine. But here's my point. If someone is listening
Wow.
and share the show with your mom, with your older sister, with your girlfriend, with your cousin, your colleagues, because women, again, Michelle, we're suffering, but we're second guessing ourselves, right? Like, that's the biggest problem.
Yes. I think we second guess ourselves. And the other thing is, like, even me, I'm sitting here thinking inside of my head, I'm so proud of you, Michelle, because it's not something that I would publicly even talk about, right? But women need to. There's nothing embarrassing about it. There's nothing shameful about it by no means. I tend to be more embarrassed, right? Because I'm a little bit closed on personal stuff. But I shared a story with you about my mother, who is 85 now, and she read a newsletter that came across through the pause, and she read through the whole thing and she cried. And she
Mhm.
said, you tell Susan she is my hero because I cannot believe that this resource is available to women. I would have loved to have had something like this available to me. She went into menopause early in her life and suffered for decades in silence and never talked about it. It's sad, right? But it's just part of life. And the fact that there actually are solutions out there, well, that's a good yay, right? That's something that we should all be talking about and sharing our stories for the betterment of our life.
Well,
Yeah.
even, thinking about the listeners for the show, it's like, maybe you're in your 40s, your 50s, and you're like, well, do I want to pivot my career? Here's the thing I want to say to
Yeah.
everyone listening. If you are having symptoms whether it's not sleeping, grinding your teeth, surges of heat, all sorts of things that happen. And men go through andropause. And I've said very openly that after I solve menopause, I'm going to solve andropause because, again, being raised by a single dad, it breaks my heart to see men suffer. And one of the biggest divorce rates is midlife. So, and they've attributed this to, oh, suddenly they're empty nesters. We don't know each other anymore. Here's what I'm going to say. You got a guy, I'm going to riff off for a minute, but you got a guy to the men listening, or gals who have male partners, brothers, that you have a guy who his testosterone is slowly decreasing. Okay. When men's testosterone goes down, they can become moody, much like women would with PMS. They can become moody, they gain weight, they have low libido, and men's libido is very much attached to their work drive. Okay. So
Oh,
that's going on.
wow.
Then you have women and progesterone's going down, estrogen's going down, brain fog, not sleeping. So you might have two people not sleeping, gaining weight, not having any drive, and they look at each other and go, that you're the problem. So what I want to say, my husband and I went through this too. So it's like, oh, okay. Now, wait a minute. What happens if we are on hormone replacement? Not everyone can have it. If you've had cancer, you cannot, but you have to,
Yeah.
speak to your doctor. Suddenly, Chris and I are both on hormone replacement. We're not empty nesters. We have four kids. The youngest is still at home, 14. But I've known my husband. We went to high school together. Our dads were best friends in high school. And it's like, suddenly I'm like, oh, you're hot. Like, honey. And it's wonderful. And I think we're seeing, for women in midlife, it's a higher suicide rate, it's a higher divorce rate. And I really believe, Michelle, that men and women going through midlife, there's a lot of things that they're looking outward and saying, that's the problem. It's my career, it's my partner, it's my this, it's my that. And I don't believe in staying in a toxic relationship or anything. But what if you look in the mirror and shift your belief? I used to do big stage events, 20,000 people in Las Vegas. Tony Robbins would speak, I would speak, Pitbull would speak, the list. And what if you look in the mirror and say, I am going to take 90 days and I'm not going to look outward and blame my circumstances on anyone else. Instead, I'm going to spend 90 days and I am going to go get a blood panel. I'm going to explore what is right for me. I'm going to use technology. Maybe you choose to download my app. Great. If you do, you do. You don't. And I'm going to do that for me. And I'm going to get my health in check. I'm going to shift my diet. I am going to do my weight training, get my protein. I'm going to do all those things. When I feel like myself, then I'm in a position, Michelle, of power to make a decision. Do I change my career? What is it I do? Because what women tend to do is they make decisions at their least powerful moment. And that
Oh,
decision
mm.
comes from a place of fear, of anxiety, of lack of worth. And anytime you make a decision like that, I watch my friends who are dating. They're dating duds because guess what? They haven't taken those 90 days to put themselves in a supreme place of power, which stands for empowerment, and to be able to make the decisions, right? So I just think that for anyone listening, take 90 days and focus on yourself. Now is the time, then make those decisions. It doesn't mean they're the wrong decisions, but if you make the right decision from the wrong place, it is always going to suck. Bad things are going to happen, and it's never going to be fulfilling. Bottom line.
Yeah. So I think that that is an absolute challenge that we need to give all the listeners to take those 90 days. I think that's incredible. And it can change your whole life. That's what I'm hearing. And I believe it. I want to ask you about, you said a lot of things in there about um, wellness, taking care of yourself, your health, how you eat, your exercise, whatever that looks like. I want to get your view on how you think about, and then we're going to build on it, right? Getting back to this 90-day challenge thing, how you think about health and living well. So, like
Mhm.
health and well being, how would you define that for someone? And I realize everyone's at a different place and
Right.
they may define it differently, but what are kind of the basic things that you think about?
One of the best things I ever heard was you don't know how bad you're feeling until you start to feel good.
Ah.
And so after I left law enforcement in the 90s, I went full on into personal training, holistic nutrition. I was a celebrity personal trainer. I became a professional athlete, and then I got sick. And I was diagnosed at age 27 with MS. And I always say I gave myself MS. So I became symptomatic. I was, running a health club. I was on radio. I was on television. I was training for triathlon, long distance triathlon. I was training clients. I was teaching nutrition out of college and doing all this stuff and a mom. And I started dropping things, Michelle. I started slurring my speech. I'd get vertigo. And by the time I was diagnosed, when I went in, my doctor, Ross, he said, see this scan, Susan, and it looked like a fishbowl full of fish. He said, that's your brain. Those are lesions. You've been diagnosed with MS. It's the most aggressive kind. In 10 years, you'll be in a wheelchair. In 20 years, you'll be
Mm.
dead. And my first thought was, I haven't run the Boston Marathon yet. That was my first thought. Then I go into Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the stages of death, and dying, grief, and all this stuff. And I made a commitment that I was going to use holistic methods.
Hmm.
And I said, if my body can turn this on, what if it can turn it off? And the first thing I want all the listeners to listen about as they define health and wellness for themselves is that dis-ease, this lack of harmony in the body, is your body turns it on. It is more
Mhm.
susceptible to things. And you can have genetic predisposition, all these different things. But when people are really healthy and happy and harmonious, I was at CES, and a lot of people got the flu. I didn't.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of things I do, which I'll get into in a minute, but I wasn't open to getting sick mentally, which I know sounds like hoodoo hoodoo to some people listening, but I just wasn't open to it. And because I wasn't open to it, I made better decisions. I didn't drink. I brought, my vitamins, and I got up in the morning, I worked out, I did all that stuff. I got 8 hours of sleep, all the common sense things. So what happened to me was, as I go and do all this research and I start really taking care of myself at a higher level, I began, Michelle, to feel better than I had ever felt in my life.
Hmm.
And what happened was my best day when I had MS became my worst day. And for anyone struggling with anything right now, I would say that as long as you can shift your mindset to say, what if my best day becomes my worst day? Then you keep on going and get a better day and better day. So to fast forward time, what happened was when I got the amoeba, I was also diagnosed with Lyme disease. And what they realized was that it wasn't MS all along, it was Lyme. So 2 years of intense antibiotics and, shifting my whole life. And I came out the other side. And so feeling better. And so to answer your great question, it's three things. Number one, we have to define health for ourselves. So it's no one else's business.
Mhm.
I enjoy doing half marathons. Some people are like, that's too long. You're too old. Your knees are gonna. No, that's you look in the mirror, sister, and talk about your damn knees because my damn knees are just fine. Okay, that's number one. Don't give me. I can't stand being around people who are like, this is gonna happen to you. Like I
I
don't.
know. Hmm.
Number one, you got to define it for yourself. Number two, create a journal and get present. So I know if I drink, I don't drink a lot, but I love really good red wine and a martini. So if I drink during the week, I know I'm going to be tired the next day. And how much money does that cost me? So if I have a big presentation or I'm on a show or whatever, can I afford to be less than 100%? Probably not. So, what is it going to cost you? How does something make you feel? How do you feel when you get your workout in versus not? How do you feel when you meditate in the morning versus you don't? How do you feel? Right? That's number two. And the third thing is that if you look at the book Atomic Habits, it was so well written about this habit stacking that you don't just go and suddenly start all these new habits in one day. Start with, okay, I'm going to have a protein shake every day. Or Monday, I do a detox every single Monday. I fast and cleanse for most of that day. I break the fast after sunset and then I have a vegan meal like a kale salad or something. I aim for 130 grams of protein every day. But that's just me. Like I've had to really play and refine it and take a look at it. But that define it for yourself. That's the bottom line.
Yep. So I think that also allows people an opportunity to think about what's the standard for me, and it's all achievable. I'm always about incremental is better than doing nothing at all. And everybody is coming from a different starting point. So I agree with you. I would love for you to talk about some of the things that you do, some of the practices you have, and from there, I want to talk about habits. But let's, and the whole thing about forming them, right, and breaking them. But I want to first start with just what are some of the things that you do that helps you, and I'm particularly thinking about as a CEO, a very busy professional that's traveling. I mean, your schedule is unbelievable where you're balancing family and work priorities, and many times they overlap. Speaking to a fellow mother that owns a business.
Mm.
And so I'd love for you to talk about the things that you do that help you be your best each day.
Oh yeah. Yeah, what I'm about to say came from doing a lot of the wrong things. Right? And it's the first piece is it's an evolution. It's not finite, right? So what we choose to do now in this place that the habits are going to refine, or sometimes a habit will take us to a certain level and then it has to be replaced by a different habit because we're going to level up. So the money we make, the health we have, the relationship we have, all of those things are related to the habits we have now. So if you want to shift that future self outcome, then you've got to shift your habits. The only way to shift them, permanently shift them, is to shift your mindset and your beliefs around those habits. So my day looks like this. So I get up right now while we're doing the show. It's like the winter, but I'm here in Scottsdale. But I get up around 5 in the morning. In the summer, I get up earlier. And then I make black organic coffee and I light some candles and I pray and meditate for an hour. And I heard Joel Osteen say that if you want something for yourself, you've got to pray it for someone else first. My prayer list is long, Michelle. It's categorized. So I start with my family, then I go broadly, praying over global events. Then I go into very specific things, families, people who've been sick, my companies that I have 7 companies in my angel portfolio. So praying over those founders. And that takes an hour. The list is long and people get added to it all the time. And then I'll usually like check Slacks, emails. I start to write gratitude notes, and then I go get my first workout of the day before I take my daughter to school. So as we're doing the show, my husband is at our Montana house. I'm in Scottsdale, so I'm single momming it. So we've got it, and she freaks out if she is like not early for something. So I got to get her to school, then I come back, get ready, and start to jam out meetings. And then the blessing is about being in single mom mode is that when she's done to pick up school, I have to take a break because I will sit and I will work and I will
Oh,
churn,
yeah.
I will go, and then it's like 6 o'clock, right? But I have to physically stop and go get her. And I work not to have any calls or things going when she's in the car. And then we come home and then she starts doing homework and then I do some more work and then I'll go do a second workout. So I'll do fasted cardio in the morning. And then I'm lifting weights or going to hot yoga. And then I come back and I make dinner. Right now we are watching what is it called? It's with Lawrence Fishburne. It's like the mysteries of the histories or something, and she and I are both super nerdy, so we started to watch that. And then she loves to go to bed early, my baby, so I go to bed at like 8:30.
Mhm. Yep. Well, that's okay. You're getting up at 5 or before. So, yeah. But
Mhm.
when you go to bed, so when I go to bed early, not as early as you. So I get up at 5 as well. Just like you, it's kind of funny. I tend to get up a little later in the winter, than in the summer. So today I was up at 5. But I like to be in bed. I sleep maybe 7 hours. I don't sleep 5 anymore and 4. Like I've gotten that completely out of my lifestyle because I used to do that for years. Some people still do it, but I'm trying very hard not to. So um, I go upstairs and I read. And that's how I kind of end my day. So the goal is to be in bed if I can at 9:30. That's the goal. Because I love to read a good book. My biggest challenge is if the book is too good, I'll turn around and it'll be midnight, Susan. So, sometimes I pull out the boring book if I really need to go to sleep.
I'm the same way. And we all know that the blue light piece, you shouldn't be on your
Yep.
screens or take your laptop to bed. Here's the thing I want to say about sleep. And like you, I used to like I'll sleep when I'm dead, and whatever.
Yeah.
Sleep. It's okay to be forgiving with yourself for sleep. And if you're here's some indicators your sleep is not right. You're gaining weight, you have the brain fog, lack of clarity, moodiness, depression, you're overeating. Fix your sleep, change your life, right? That's a big piece. So one of the things I want everyone to think about is this concept of how much sleep do I need now?
Mm.
And Dan Sullivan, who created Strategic Coach, he and Ben Hardy, they wrote about this in a book called 10x is not 2x. So I want
Okay.
everyone to think about this concept. It's a gift and it's something I'm living into, right? So when I was a professional athlete and I had a race coming up,
Hmm.
I had different periods. So I had the building phase where we're doing tons of endurance work, like 10-hour workout days and go for a 3-hour run, 2-hour swim practice, 5-hour bike. That was the longest day, be a lot. And I'd build, build, build. Then I'd have a bit of recovery. And then I'd start the speed training phase. Then I'd have the recovery phase. Then it's the race prep phase and it's a taper. So you're doing less of the workouts. You're getting as much rest as you can. And then you go in the race. And then the other side is recovery. What we tend to do as stupid humans is we are like, every day is race day and we're just going to race and race and race and then we're going to burn out and we're going to like have all these problems, right? And so I started to think about my life in my 50s as, wait a minute, Susan, you're a former professional athlete. So what if you start to think about it this way? So when I was going into CES, I canceled a bunch of things that I had a couple days before. I said, I'm going to rest and I am going to go into CES, that I'm going to be recovered. I went for a massage. I was like, eating properly and went to CES, didn't get sick. And then on the other side of CES, I came back and I, had a podcast to record. I had all these different things to do. And so I didn't recover. And I felt myself, Michelle, going kind of down and down and down.
Ah.
And
Mhm.
then old patterns started to rise to the surface about how I compensated for not being as rested. So I went,
Right.
wait a minute, stop. So I canceled some appointments. I took my days down to even the day we're doing the show, just to give everyone full perspective. I am only working physically with humans for 4 hours today. And then after I pick up my daughter, I will go to a hot yoga class. I have stuff going on in the company. We're about to hire 5 people. I've got to vet candidates. There's so many things to do. But if I'm not recovered, and then you go into this recovery phase. And so, like this weekend coming, I've got nothing going on. I'll go for a hike, I'll go for a massage, do all that stuff. But Michelle, when we think about things like I have my season of production, then I'm
Yeah.
going to recover. In my recovery season, maybe I need 8 hours of sleep. But in my production season, maybe I'm cool with 7 hours of sleep. That's fine. So sleep isn't this finite number. The new research shows it's more important the time you get up than the time you go to bed. Actually, it's a consistent wake up time.
Oh, that's interesting. I had not heard that.
Yes.
Hmm. You know what's funny is those nights that I stay up just too late, it's kind of bad. Even on the weekend, I'm still waking up at 5. Not in a bad way, and I actually feel okay, but I'm just like ready for my day.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I hadn't heard that before. Um, You said something that I think everybody needs to really take to heart, which is around that recovery,
Mm,
because it is so easy for you. And I've done it. I did it just a few weeks ago and I felt it Monday morning. I worked all weekend. I was
yes.
finishing up. So, we are a consultant and we also not only work in B2B, but we also work with consultants that are much larger than we are, right? So the global consulting firms, we're working for one with one now, and they work day and night, and so we had some stuff to get ready for Monday. I had some things that were requested, and there was no way that I was going to ask the team or that the team would get it done. So I did it, right? I'm sure you do that a lot. Boy, I could feel it. And I was just making a comment to somebody out today because we just came out of a big meeting and the thought is, oh my God, we're going to be working this week and having to get through. And I said, you know what? I got it. I can do it. And then I'm walking away and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, this
Mm,
isn't going to it's not sustainable and it's not going to make me my best self. And I think that leaders need to think about that. um, I was very surprised and then I wasn't when I got to my third one. So I also I stopped in recent years and I want to go back, but I would run triathlons. I was a triathlete as well. And I'll never forget my very first triathlon. It was a little one, right? It was a sprint called My First Try. Men and women, everybody was just in it. It was up at Lake Lanier here in Atlanta. So it wasn't by age, it wasn't by anything. Little old me came in first, right? Out of everybody. And then my second one, I'm like, holy mackerel, because it was like seated. It was good. I came in the middle of the pack, right? The upper of the middle of the pack. I'm like, what's going on here? And I realized as I was looking at everyone around me, I also, I was working, I had my kids. I gave myself recovery. I'm like, these guys, all they're doing is training. They're not recovering. Every day was like race day. And
mhm.
I think that we have to look at our work like that as well. It's very wise advice to give people because we need recovery just like we do as if we are in a race because we're in a game, right? It's a long game. And to really win in it, you got to give yourself that time.
Absolutely. And we have to think about why we would work through the weekend. So we're
Yes.
only working through the weekend for three reasons. One is we were so damn inefficient during the week that we're
Mm,
way behind. Number two is we said yes to something and we made a commitment and we're people who live into our commitments. Or number three,
right.
we're compensating for people who didn't get their work done during the week. And so
Yep.
this resentment builds up. So if I am working on the weekend, what I like to do personally is leave creative work for the weekend
Mhm.
because I have no meetings and whether it's writing a blog or thinking about like our marketing campaign or whatever it is, but I give myself permission to do it if I am going.
Yep.
The other thing is internally, I have said no planned meetings on Fridays. If you get your work done by Thursday night, great. There are no planned meetings on Fridays. And
Yep.
the other thing at the beginning of the year that I do, and I stopped doing it, and this year I came back to it because I was like, what I was doing. Remember, I said certain habits get you to one level, but if
Yes.
you're stuck in your income, your weight, anything, like you have to rehabit your life. And so what I did, Michelle, is I went through and I picked different Fridays in the month, and they're called thinking and reflecting days. And I said to the team, these are my thinking and reflecting days. So there are no planned meetings, right? So I have one coming up. There's a meeting on that day, but I'm not bitter or resentful because I had no planned meetings and it's actually
Hmm.
a brainstorming meeting for something that's coming up, right? So when we take back our power, because we will say yes and work 7 days of the week. Remember, I said if we do something for the wrong reasons, the right thing for the wrong reasons, it's
Right.
a poor outcome. If we start to say yes to that, then we end up bitter and resentful. And you asked
That's right.
earlier
Yep.
why women are leaving mid-career. Well, I would look in the mirror and say, how many times did you say yes to something only to resent it? And then you blame the other person. Well, my boss asked me to. Well, why did you say yes? You said yes because you were worried you would get fired if you said no. And so the question I would say to anyone is, okay, why did you say yes? Are you not an abundant person? There are other jobs out there. If your boss is a megalomaniac, narcissist, or whatever, if you don't work through the weekend, then, find something else. We
Yep.
are in charge of our own lives. And so this concept of production and rest, I was so out of balance for 3 years. I was on airplanes every single
Wow.
week. I was exhausted. I ground down my teeth. I lost my back teeth. Like it was just stupid. And I knew better. And just because we have a habit locked in doesn't mean we can't get out of that habit, right? It's this daily choice. And the last thing I'm going to say is what I encourage everyone to do listening is you need to have that thinking time. Now, some people,
Yes.
it could be like 10 minutes in a steam room, it could be going for a walk. But guess what? That thinking time is not once a week, it's actually every day. And when you get that idea of whatever it is, you need to write it down and you need to act on it. And when you're in that thinking time, you act on what comes up for you and you get in a place called flow. That's where you make more money. That's where you're more productive. You feel better. You attract at a different level. But when you're not doing your thinking time, you're going to burn out. Like bottom line.
So important. I completely agree with you. So I'm trying to remember, because I was trying to remember the year, and it could have been the 2019 year, which had been Sales Globe. That's my business. It was our best year on record, right? Although, yay, 2024 actually beat it. So we're doing really well as a company. But anyway, 2019, I remember we couldn't hire enough consultants. And we were working like I, in particular, right, and my partner, day and night, 7 days a week, like building really key relationships and building out our private equity relationship network. Oh my God. Do you know? And I looked back on that year and I said, okay, great. We made a lot of money, but do you know I didn't learn one thing, meaning one new thing? I learned never to do that again, but I didn't allow myself time to think or to learn. I was putting those answers out so quickly, to our clients, and we did really great work. But even what work my consultants are doing, and part of the joy is understanding what they're coming up with, right? And then pushing it to the next level. No time. So I think that you really do disservice to yourself without giving yourself that thinking time. It's not even a luxury, it really is a necessity.
Oh, absolutely. And thinking about that because I've been reflecting on this too, Michelle. So looking at, my best income year
Yeah.
personally, right? And what was I doing? And for me, I was doing my thinking time. Every
Yep.
90 days, I was going by myself for a long weekend and just literally unplugging, thinking. And when I didn't do that, I was grinding, 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 and actually my income went down because if whatever story we're telling ourselves about money is going to be our truth. So if we tell ourselves we only make money if we work hard, that's a belief, or we have to suffer to make money. That was my belief, and that's one I'm working on. So it's like, oh, the more money I make, the more I have to suffer to make it, right? So as a result, I would attract a lot of toxic situations that would just reinforce my need to suffer. So we have to really sit with that and say, okay, if I'm going to achieve something I've never achieved, right? Like let's say your greatest business year has been 10 million and you've never done 20 million, you have to become someone you've never become. And
Yeah.
the consciousness of the company directly relates to the consciousness of the founder. If the founder isn't expanding her or his consciousness, the company is not going to grow. It's always going to reach a certain level. It's going to be stuck. You'll have the wrong hires. You'll have a toxic workplace. You'll have all these things. And you think, why are all these bad things happening to me? Because you didn't take time to actually expand your consciousness. And it's just this reflection back to you that something needs to change. And nothing's going to
Yes.
change unless you step out of your environment for a few days and then step back in.
You know what? And I can speak from personal experience. You are absolutely right. And we tell ourselves, so we have a pact. Okay, well, first of all, if anyone's on vacation, they are on vacation. So
Yep.
I have had people come to me and say, look, I'll be on. I'll be on. And I'm like, no, you won't. You
Mhm.
absolutely will not. The project team can carry it. This is sales effectiveness. We are not doing surgery on anyone, right? So I enforce that they take the time. Conversely, I take the time, right? So um, I'm away, I'm away. And I know I've got a trusted team here. And that's where you have to be. And I do find that I'm much better. And attract and retain the people that you are. And we want excellence. We want excellence at all times. We want people that respect each other, right? They're creative. But if we can't allow them to be their best selves here at work, if we're not even going to attract them. So I think it's all related.
Oh, it is. There's no question. And I hope that, for the listeners, definitely if any of this is resonating, tag Michelle, tag me on social, like, oh my gosh, I am hearing you. The other thing is buy a paper day planner. And so when I wrote the book Organize Your
Huh.
Life back in 2015, I suggested everyone buy a paper day planner. And so the one I use is at a glance. And Michelle, you see the whole week at a glance. And then get some highlighters, carve out an hour to do this, and go through your rest of your year and carve out, these are my long weekends. This is my vacation time. And then guess what? Tell your team this, let's all be aligned. And I'm going to protect you. You protect me. I have your back. You have my back. And some of the people that are at my new company, I worked with them in my previous company. And so they know, like, one of them especially, like, she guards our company culture, and she'll come out of a meeting and she's like, that meeting with that person wasn't a cultural alignment. And like, I know, Dana, you're right, 100%, I get it. And so part of our culture is to say that work isn't your raison d'etre, your reason for being. Work
Right.
is something you do, but we have to create this workplace that fosters a culture of curiosity, a culture of balance, a culture,
Yep.
people say work-life balance doesn't exist. I would say, well, you're not highly conscious enough if you think that you're running a program that you have to grind it out to make more money. Even Gary Vee, a funny story about Gary Vee. So Gary Vee was all about grind, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. So I'm doing a speaking event in Las Vegas and I'm on, and then Gary Vee is on. And I talk about work-life balance. And if you are organized enough, you will have more balance because you get to this place where you become more efficient. You know what to say yes to, what to say no to. So Gary gets
Right.
on stage and he's like, that nice lady, he's older than I, that nice lady doesn't know what she's talking about. There's no work-life balance. You have to grind, grind, grind. Then 2 years later, he's like, oh, you have to have balance. And I see this
Oh boy, you
Instagram
gotta
video. I'm
love
like,
it. That's
whoa, like, dude. And I just, he was in Las Vegas at this thing I was at. I didn't get a chance. The next time I see Gary Vee, like, Gary, I'm going to call you out about that event we did because, the same guy who was like, it doesn't exist, was talking about it. And kudos to him, because at some point there must have been an inflection point for him
yep.
where he had to look in the mirror and say, this isn't working for me. It's not working for my relationships. It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. I'm with you. We really try to hire to our culture too. I remember a woman coming in and I thought, oh yeah, she'll be productive. And she talked about there is no life work balance. I define it as life work fusion. And I went, okay. I just said, no, this cannot be. Anyway, it was just, we passed on that one. I don't think it would have been a good fit for us. But the point is that it's very important. And if you want to lead a company, and I want to be happy and healthy for many decades to come, you got to be looking at that. So I want to shift over, and I would love for you to share with us a little bit about your viewpoint on habits, because I was researching you. So funny you talked about doing your creative work on the weekend. One of my joys is researching and spending more time, although you and I know each other, but spending time researching my podcast guests. And I'll do it like early in the morning on the weekend because it's fun. I couldn't stop watching your videos and like podcasts that you've done and listening because you've got so much. So talk to us about your view on, building habits, what they are, and kind of some of your own that you might have.
Sure. Yeah, such a timely question, Michelle. So I went into 2025. There was a lot of different things happening. So going to Christmas as a first example. So my husband is so aptly named. His father always used to say it. So his name is Chris. Chris loves Christmas. Like the cooking, I do the decorating. He could care, but he loves it. The kids are all there. He loves, loves, loves it. So we're going through Christmas, and I'm like, babe, I have to like, we need to have a serious talk because I had been commuting back and forth from Whitefish, Montana. We bought, a home in like this great town that we love, but I looked at my productivity and I was on airplanes for my business travel and just my commuting travel. It was like 10 plus days a month. And
Oh,
you don't get those days back. And some people can work on an airplane. There's a genetic condition for some people that once they go above 10,000 feet, they just start to sleep because the oxygen changes. I'm one of those people.
wow.
So I'm an
Huh.
excellent plane sleeper. It is my claim to fame. It's like fabulous. So if I was on a layover or something, and there was no real direct flight from Phoenix to Whitefish, so I was like on a layover, I'd get some work done, then I'd be on the plane, then I'd be sleeping, then I'd get back to my house and I'd slept on all the planes, and then I couldn't sleep. And so I said, we have all of this support in Arizona, and we'd been asked by Mayor Kate Gallego, I believe the youngest mayor of a major city in the United States, to represent Arizona for technology, and all these things were happening.
Wow.
I said, Chris, I need to move back. Like I just can't do this. And literally, he was like, I don't really want to move back, but I see it. Literally, Michelle, we decide the week of Christmas that we're moving back, go through Christmas, New Year's Day, I'm on a plane with our youngest daughter, trying to get her back into her previous school, which was sold out. It's such a great school. And then, going, okay, now we got to put a house on the market. And I'm going to Consumer Electronics Show where I'm doing two talks, one on agentic AI,
Wow.
hosting a panel on robotics, like all, City of Phoenix booth, doing all this stuff. And, but I came into the year and it felt really heavy and busy.
Mm, mhm.
And I want everyone to step back just for a moment because when something feels heavy and busy, instead of complaining, you have to ask yourself, why?
Mhm.
And why does it feel like this? And it felt like I was suffocating because every freaking hour in my calendar was booked with meetings and, all sorts of stuff. Michelle, it was so heavy. And I said, you know what? I've been feeling this way, not just these last 2 weeks, but for 3 years. And so
Mm.
change had to happen. One was a big change was we love Whitefish, but it's the right city, not the right time. So we had to, put the house on the market and say we're moving back. That automatically gave me 8 days of the month back. Eight.
Wow, that's big. Yeah.
Right? So making some number one, if you're going to create new habits, you're probably going to have to make some hard decisions.
Mm.
Another one for me was I really started to, especially during during the fall, I was watching a lot of news and I knew that that wasn't the healthiest thing for me.
Mm.
So I said, okay, I am going to go on a news detox. And I'm not doing that. So immediately I started to get more productive and some of that heaviness went away. And so, some of the listeners are like, well, that's obvious. Well, the thing I would say is how much news are you all watching? Like, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
The third thing was I had to really pay attention to if I'm going to build this startup to where it's capable of being this year, then I need to have habits that are going to align with the level of revenue, the caliber of team members. So, what is it I need to do? And so I went, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to stop reading fiction in the month of January. So, I love espionage novels. I read them before bed. I said, nope, not doing that. My new habit is I am reading I've read over 700 and written books on personal development, finance, and stuff. So I'm reading those types of books before bed.
Yeah.
In the morning, I am listening to a podcast that is someone else's show who I highly respect. Right now, I'm listening to a lot of Lewis Howes shows. And I've met his personal coach, Chris Lee, outstanding guy. And so starting to with those habits. And it's amazing,
Yeah.
Michelle, because the heaviness is dissipating. The new habit, as I said, I went through my calendar. I used to do this, and then I stopped 3 years ago. And I told myself a story that my calendar belonged to someone else because there was an ethos in that company. Like, our calendars are just open, put a time on my calendar whenever. And I said, no, I am going to go block out these Fridays and I'm going to do
Yep.
this. I'm
Mm.
blocking out when our family is going to Scotland. I haven't booked the tickets or anything yet, but that is blocked out. And I went through the whole year and I reclaimed it, got rid of the heaviness, and living into the habits that align me with. And every morning I pray, God, help me to be the wife, mother, and CEO you want me to be. And so aligning with that vision of who I am this year to achieve things I haven't yet achieved before, right? So thinking like that's, it's a long answer on this habit, but I want everyone to ask themselves, if I'm feeling this heaviness and intensity, why? What big decisions do I need to make? What habits do I need to change?
So I don't think that it was too long of an answer. And actually, I'm very excited because I'm going to get the calendar now. It's true about just blocking that time. And, it's rough because when you're sitting here, when I think about in years past, when I've said to my family, well, I'm not sure yet when we're going to go on vacation or exactly when. I know we're going to go to Ireland. I'm not sure what month yet. You know what? You just need to do it and claim your own. And you're right. Things will adapt around it. You're not going to miss anything. So I'm excited about doing that. And I think that's actually a great habit for people to start with. You
Can I,
also
can
wrote,
I, oh, sorry. You just reminded me. I just wanted to share.
yeah,
So, when I wrote the book, Organize Your Life,
yeah.
one of the things that I said was, I want everyone to think about this. If you have a junk drawer and you clean it out, it is going to get filled up. If
Mm.
you clean out your garage, there's going to be stuff in it, right? Like I would always say to women, if you want new clothes, go donate all the things that don't fit, don't resonate with you or whatever. And I was teaching this stuff like for 20 years, like long, long ago before, a lot of the other stuff that we heard, but go clean it out, put the empty hangers there, right? When I was single, I cleaned out half my closet. This was in the year 2000, cleaned out half my closet. I had a side table, both sides of the bed. One side was clean. And when I re-met my husband, Chris, it was like, a city of 7 million people, Toronto. We met at a health club at 5 in the morning. We moved in on our second date. We've been together
Oh,
ever since.
wow.
But I created that space. And
Yeah.
if we don't create the space, things will fill that space that are not necessarily at the level we want to attract at. And I'll give another example. So in my day, I carve out this time called admin. Now, I just call it admin, but I'll give you an example today. So my friends and I are working on for CES 2025 a component of that, and it's going to be amazing. But because I have this time and space in my day, and he texted me this morning, he's like, "Hey, things are really moving fast. Can I talk to him?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have space to do that." Because if we conversely, Tuesday, I had 10 meetings and a business dinner. And by the time I went
Wow.
to the dinner, Michelle, I was exhausted. And I'm walking out the door and I left having high conscious kids because Emery, she says, Mama, I know you're tired. The dinner started at 8, by the way, Michelle, I should be in bed, right?
Oh,
And she's like, but what if you open your mind to the fact that something good is going to happen from this dinner? And so I go to this dinner, it's very intimate, and I sit beside this woman, and this woman's like, Susan, I want to help you. I'm going to introduce you to someone who started this major women's network, and she'd love to hear about the pause. She'd love to hear about what's going on. And so for me, I'm still in it. I'm not perfect. I had 10 meetings, it was too many, but I know, going back to the training thing, Tuesday was a performance day. That's why I canceled a bunch of stuff for the remainder of the week so that I could be in recovery mode,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. So you're getting that balance. You've wrote another book. You've written several books, but the other book about the have-it-all woman, right?
Mhm.
And so you talked about how women, we don't. It almost seems like, it's a fantasy, right? Oh, you can have it all. Can you really have it all? But you're here to tell people that you can, depending, how you define what having it all means. So I want you to define your own words. Like if I, and again, what that means to each person will be different, but it's got some basic premise, right? The state of having it all, what that really means. So I'd love you to define it and then talk about how women can reframe their thinking to really get where they want to go.
Sure. It's so funny you mention it because I've been thinking a lot about updating that book with lessons
Oh,
down because I,
yeah.
I wrote it in '07, right? And so so much happened since then. We had a recession, we had a pandemic. Firstly, I'm going to say most men, here's the fundamental difference. Most men think they can have it all. They can have the money, they can have the wife, they can have the career. It's a fundamental shift in thinking. Like, who told women we can't have it all? That's the first thing. So, girls, we can have the relationship, we can have the money, we can have the career, we can have the health, we can have it all. We can have it all. It starts with this concept that what if I can't? The second thing is we have to define it for ourselves because the comparison game and social media has amplified that. How often do you go on social media and maybe you have a girlfriend and she's getting married for the second time and she posts like, her picture perfect Instagram, black and white,
Yeah.
like Annie Leibovitz took the photos and, like amazing and, or her house or, whatever. And we have that jealousy thing, but that's her definition, right? So as long as we are, Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks said this, as long as we are jealous of what someone else has, we will never have it.
Oh, I just love that.
So,
Yep.
thinking about replacing, in order to have it all, we have to replace our criticism with curiosity. So, how did they have it? And I was listening to this Kabbalah expert on Lewis Howes, and he was talking about that. One of the fastest ways to change limiting beliefs around money is be with someone who doesn't have that same limiting belief or did and has already busted through it, right? Any man I know, and I know billionaires, I know guys, two of my friends in their 60s, Michelle, one bought Bitcoin at $50, one bought it at $200.
Oh my.
And
No
they have,
way.
yep. And just to give an example of what I'm sharing, because when I'm talking about this stuff, for some people it's hard to conceptualize. So I want to share a story. So my husband does not invest in cryptocurrency, and he's kind of like he's the math nerd, right? So and he's a CPA. He's like, oh, it's a scam, whatever. It wasn't until not one, but two of our friends who he respects, one's an engineer, one's an attorney, highly respects these guys, tells him that they bought, one guy, he won a legal case. He put, I think, $1 million in Bitcoin when it was 50 a coin. Do the math.
Oh my gosh.
And another guy, friend of ours for 20 years, very cerebral, analytical, and buys it at 200 a coin. I don't know how much he put in, but anyway,
My gosh.
he's he bought office buildings, done all this stuff. So it shifted Chris's mindset to, huh, it is possible that if that can happen to someone, and these are guys I respect, that they could technically, make a lot of money by essentially effectively taking a gamble and making a calculated investment, as an example. The reason I say all of this with this concept of having it all is because now Chris went from being critical of cryptocurrency to now being curious. From a
Hmm.
place of curiosity, that's how we build our have it all life. Because if you're not willing to say to your girlfriend, how do you have this amazing podcast, Michelle? Or why is it, Michelle, that you look as good as you look, as opposed to, it must be easy for her because she's just genetically gifted. Like, when you say that stupid stuff, like, that's why I don't watch any of the Real Housewives. Like, I can't
Oh, I don't either. I don't watch any of
I
those.
can't handle that critical,
No.
condemning, nasty, nitpicky, because when you're in that state, you're not in a place of curiosity. And you said you didn't learn anything that year, 2019. If you're not in a place of curiosity, you're not learning. If you're not learning, you're not growing. So you define what having it all means to you. It's no one else's. You guard that. You make your vision board. I love vision boards. Do that. And then you find people who have achieved different components of it and you ask them
Yes.
how they did it. That's how you do it.
Yes. I absolutely love that you said that. So I think I look around at people and I'm like, are you kidding me? So my mindset is not, I don't have it in me to be like envious or jealous of someone. Like, I don't want to. I look at someone like you and I say, what can I learn from her? I want to
Mhm.
be around people like her. And that's my reality. That's where I come from. But I look at people and I hear them being critical of very successful women. And I'm looking, you got to love this one where they say, oh, she's so ugly for an absolutely beautiful, successful woman. And I'm like, well, what planet are you living on? And I think about, though, the missed opportunity of learning from those people. I mean, that's what I do, right? I mean, I just think that you've got to open yourself up to that. And it's just a better way to live. Have you ever had, because I had, like, a feeling that'll bug you and you're like, I've never felt that way before. I don't like that feeling and it needs to not be part of my life, right? So
Mhm.
let's make up a jealousy. That wasn't my feeling. But let's say that that was the one. And you sit here and you're like, okay, let's figure out the root cause behind this because I don't want to be defined by that or be that person. And I think you absolutely can, but it comes from a point of, I think, like for me, it was looking at myself and saying, why do you feel that way? What is it about you inside? Are you either insecure right now? Are you not feeling certain? Like, what is it that's causing this? And then let's figure out, Michelle, it starts with me. Like, how do we get out of this, right? I mean, but I think it starts with being honest and truthful with yourself.
Sure. You said something so important. It's a feeling that you don't like, and it starts with that. And so, um, for 20 years, I was in the holistic health world, doing the speaking, doing all that stuff before I went into tech. And now I get to be in tech and combine all my worlds, and it's really
Yeah.
fun. It's amazing.
So that's so wonderful. Yep.
And the during that course of my 20 years in the holistic side, I did my certification in NLP, neuro linguistic programming, not the natural language processing that happens on the AI side. And the same lineage of study that Tony Robbins did, I did that. So the reason I'm mentioning this is Gabby Bernstein has a new book called Self Help,
Hmm.
and she articulated this learning that I did years ago that Tony teaches that we can all apply. And I'm going to do it very, very quickly. Uh,
Okay.
Shout out to Gabby's work. I don't know Gabby directly, but we have people we know in common. When we feel a feeling, Michelle, we don't like, or we take an action and we go, oh, why did I do that?
Hmm.
We're running a program that usually stems from childhood. And this could be toddler time, it could be like, 5, 6, 7, it could be even in our teens, where there was an event, we had an interpretation of that event based on the age we were, and we created what we call an NLP, a program. And it's interesting how AI and this brain work, personal development are very similar because we create programs that create outcomes. So when we have that feeling, a great question to ask ourselves is, which childhood version of me right now is scared?
Oh, wow.
And why is she behaving like this? Let me give you a real example. So when I was at CES, normally this is what CES is like. I get to CES on Monday. My girlfriend's like, hey, want to meet up for a drink? And then the next night it's like open bars starting at 3, like tech people, like, typical. And so I'm like, I know I don't want to drink. I'm gonna have a glass of wine the last night, but because I was on stage and everything every day, I didn't want that experience for
Yeah.
myself. I wanted to be in flow, healthy. So we're at this event and it's this big mixer. And my girlfriend is like, do you want to drink? Do you want to drink? Do you want to drink? And I'm like, no, I just want some sparkling water. And then it's like, oh, I do want to drink. And so what I did is I stepped back and I went, which childhood version of me wants a drink? Because adult Susan says no, she doesn't actually want one, but which
Mm.
childhood version of me? So that's my teenage Susan, who naturally people would think I'm extroverted, but I'm highly, highly introverted. I'm a situational extrovert, so I can be on a stage, but then it takes me usually a day and a half to recover from stuff like that. So I'm there, and teenage Susan, who was very insecure, who moved out, whose mother was a drug addict, who, did all these things, used to do her homework in bars, underage, all this stuff. She's scared. She's self-conscious. There are all these highly accomplished people and, SVP at this company and VP at this company, and she's having imposter syndrome and, all this stuff. And I just took a breath and I just said internally, I'm like, you're okay. You're okay. And I said to my girlfriend, no, I don't want to drink, but I really want a Pellegrino. That's what I really, really want. And I had one and I was fine. So when we have that feeling, that thought that doesn't, it's somewhat familiar, but it doesn't feel like who we are now. It's
Yeah.
coming from a childhood program. You step back, you ask, you give compassion, and you take a breath and say, I'm okay. Like that, and that's the best advice I could give in this show, because we're all struggling with someone, people listening. Some of you, you make multiple six figures, you have millions in the bank, and you're still freaking out. You're freaking out and you're in fear, like the whole world is going to collapse on you. That's actually not you. It's a childhood version of yourself running that program. And once you address yourself with that compassion, with that love, you can move forward in a place of confidence. And it's amazing what you're going to accomplish.
Wow, Susan, that was probably the best summary of this podcast that I could have hoped for.
Oh,
Thank
thank you.
you so much for that. I would love for you to tell people, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. Absolutely. So I have my website. If you are, I I run an AI company. Obviously, I also am a professional speaker. So if you're looking for a speaker, go to www.susansly.com. I'm on all the socials. I'm on LinkedIn, on Instagram, X, Facebook, you name it. You can get a hold of me there. And my final, parting thing, just to
Mm,
to tie it all together, we started the conversation with AI,
yeah.
right? As we go into this new AI world, next year, Elon Musk will release his robots, the Optimus robots, for the public in 2026. We have all these AI models that are being built. And I would say that if you are approaching the world in fear right now, do what I said. Step back, take a breath. What part of me is in fear? Let yourself know you're okay. Be flexible and adaptable, because we can either look at something with fear and condemnation, or we can be curious and we can figure out how we're going to thrive in this new world.
Susan Sly, you couldn't have said it any better, or neither could I. So thank you so much again for being here. And I do hope that one day you'll come back to riding the big wheel.
All right. Thank you, Michelle, for having me, and take care, everyone. I hope you have an amazing, amazing rest of your year.
Thanks so much. Hey, it's Michelle. Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoy our podcast and know someone who you believe would make a great guest, I would love to hear from you. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and let's talk. I'd love to hear your feedback, and as always, may it inspire you in your own personal and professional journey of life.